Very good morning. A very good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us for the next HR How To in our series. Today, we're going to talk about managing conflict. Just to let you know that we are recording this so that we can send it out to you following the webinar. And I will also be providing the slides to you as well. So just to let you know that. If you could please make sure you're on mute, that would be super. So today I am going to talk a bit more about managing conflict. So we're going to talk today about spotting the early warning signs of workplace conflict, looking at some practical, simple strategies you can use to deal with disagreements fairly and legally, gaining clarity on your responsibilities when it comes to conflict resolution, and then any questions that you have. The idea of the HR how-to series is that this is really, if you like, a quick and dirty view of a particular topic that we often get asked lots of questions on by our clients. So this is a very practical session, and it's then at the end space to ask questions so that you can take something away with you, hopefully, that's going to help either now or with situations that might be up and coming. So on that note, do please use the chat function. As always, there's really no stupid answers. This is designed to be very interactive. This is your session rather than just me talking endlessly for the next half an hour. So on that point then, just to warm us up a bit on this Wednesday morning, I'd like to know, what are the typical reasons for conflict in your workplace? You don't have to share the details, but even if they've been past issues, what have been the reasons for conflict in your workplace? And if you've had none, which is great, what do you think might be reasons for conflict in your workplace? So do please take to the chat function, drop in your responses. Be interested to hear your thoughts on that. So one of the things, just to warm us up a bit, might be that it could be that people are feeling that they've got better benefits than other people. You know, that can sometimes create conflict, for example. So do please take to the chat function. Don't be shy. I appreciate it's a sensitive topic. Different ways to complete tasks. Yes, Assam, absolutely. Thank you. Good one there. Yeah. Okay, good. Well, as we go through, if you think of any particular anything in particular, then do please drop them in. Lack of communication. Thank you, Nalakshi. Absolutely. Lack of transparency. Rifat. Very good. Yeah. In the way that ideas and changes are communicated, disagreeing with with processes. You are good. Excellent. Yes, absolutely. Some really good examples there of conflicts. Nigel says overpay. I'm performing the same roles. Yes, very usual. That's Nigel. Delegating delivery. Yes, good. Yeah, really good. Thank you. Some really good responses there. Okay, so I guess first and foremost, we just want to understand what is conflict, and we define conflict as being broken down into three components: physical, mental, and emotional. So for something to be considered conflict, strictly speaking, there needs to be two people in the scenario. It typically relates to a point of difference, and you've done well there to highlight what some of those might be. And then it tends to have an emotional response attached to it. So anger, fear, shame. And as some of you have said there, it will also be a point then that leaves people feeling that they are maybe being treated often less fairly in the in the workplace setting. Conflict can be very difficult to deal with, and we know that people inherently tend to respond to conflict in three ways, what we call the three Fs. Does anyone want to take to the chat and share what they think those three Fs might be? So what are the three ways? Frustration, Joe, fantastic, well done. There is a clue in the slide. Fear, good, yeah. Excellent, Nigel. Flight, yes. Fight, yes. Absolutely. Well done, everybody. The clue was definitely there in the slide. So what you will find is that people are inherently wired to deal with conflict in one of these three ways. So fight, which will be that they will respond immediately to a situation. Flight, which is where people tend to almost run away, dare I say, in a conflict situation. And what we now call freeze, which is where people just don't know how to deal with the conflict and are almost paralyzed. Worth noting, these three responses, although we've labeled them in this way, are very primal. So if you think right back to when we were cave people, if you saw something big and hairy with big teeth run towards you, you will probably have adopted one of these three. So it's the body's way of preparing you for a situation that you are uncomfortable with. So it drives adrenaline and therefore creates a situation that generally means you probably want to respond. So early signs of conflict are often we find go quite unnoticed. So you'll tend to find that things start small. So there'll be tension between employees. Employees will start maybe to avoid each other. You sometimes see in team meetings, for example, that there will be employee disagreement about particular points. Um, you can start to see, for example, passive aggressive behavior, for example, curt emails or sarcastic remarks. And I guess practically speaking, what we start to see is people moving away from each other. So there'll be a dip. People don't typically like conflict. So at this point, it can often be the case that one or other party is unaware that the other party feels in conflict with them or feels that there's a disconnection. What that does do, and I'm sure or I know I certainly have been in environments where peripherally it can create quite an uncomfortable work environment where people start to talk in whispers about, oh, did you know X is not talking to Y, or did you hear that comment that that person made at the team meeting? And these will be all early indications for you to look out for that suggest that conflict is potentially on its way. Now, as you know, a common theme for us with the HR how-tos is that always in any of these situations, and generally with people management, what you want to do is deal with things in the moment. And therefore, where you do start to identify those behaviors, you should be thinking about going in to have a conversation with the employees. The way to do that, as I'm sure you'll understand, is to prepare well. So where you may be identifying that there is conflict between two employees, what you want to have is clear evidence of how that's showing in their behavior, because people will be sensitive as it is, and that fight, flight, or freeze response will often be what is driving that behavior. So you do have to approach that sensitively. What you will want to do is to create a safe space, but be direct and clear that you've identified these behaviors. And what you want to do is to support the employees to deal with the issues before they escalate into something larger. Now, one of the things we do say with managing conflict is that we don't use why. Does anyone want to share why they think that might be? Why might we not want to use why in a conflict management situation? Any thoughts? Welcome on that. What might be the reason? So if I, for example, am in conflict with if Kirsty is in conflict with one of the team and I say, well, why, Kirsty? Why are you behaving that way? And what might that incite for Kirsty as an example? Keeping you on your toes today, by the way. Any thoughts? Yes, excellent. Thank you, Rifat. Thank you, Nalakshi. Absolutely. So the word why can be very loaded in these situations. As Rifat says there, it can um, put a sense of onus on the person you're talking to be responsible for the conflict. It can sometimes, I find, leave people feeling judged, if you like. So why did you do that? Why being quite a judgmental word to use. And as Noel actually said, the why is subjective. So your sense of why can often not be other people's sense of why. So as with all of our people management practices, what we will want to do is to go in and be clear and objective and to help to understand that. So the words to use beyond the why will be what is the reason for? How is this situation arisen? Tell me more about what happened. Help me understand what we can do to get through this. How can I support you? They are all less confrontational, more supportive words to use when you're managing conflict. So primary message here is where you start to see behavioral elements coming through that may suggest conflict. Be ready to go in and tackle it with the evidence that that you have. Now, the problem with managing conflict is often that it in itself incites, very anxious behaviour, sometimes very hostile behaviour, a lack of communication from people that feel they're in that situation because they're being attacked. So you will want to think about using behaviours that diffuse conflict. So if you are meeting an employee, the first most important thing to do is to listen and give the employee the space. Now, I talk about employee singularly, but if you're identifying that something's happening between two employees, then most certainly you would deal with both in the same way to demonstrate impartiality. So active listening is key. The opening question might be, I've observed that in the recent team meeting, you and Jane were hostile to each other in the way you spoke. I'm interested to understand more what might be happening with that and how I can help. So that's the kind of supportive narrative you will want to use. Speak slowly and clearly and use open body language so that the people you're dealing with don't feel that the situation that you're talking about in itself is creating more conflict. You will want to respond calmly and composed, so you won't want to be dramatic, for example, about it, or automatically shut people down. You will just want to give people the space, allow them to share their concerns, and remain neutral in your responses, because invariably you will need to go away and consider what's been said and how then best to tackle the situation if there is one. Um, to help with that, we sometimes use this very simple model of how that might translate into practice. So the EEC model is a way of sharing with an employee how they behaved and the effect of that behavior. So if, for example, you're in a situation with an employee where maybe there's an element of conflict because things are not working well, the EEC model is a really good way to position what the challenge is. So here I've said, for example, you were late yesterday. the effect being your phone wasn't covered, and the change being you need to arrive on time. So all of this really centers back around to the point that with conflict management, or with maybe even just difficult conversations, as difficult as you may find that as a manager, you do need to be very direct so that people are clear in the right way of what the what the challenge is. I thought, because this is a very practical session, I thought it'd be helpful to share with you some of the ways that we would suggest responding if you're in these conflict situations. And sometimes when we go in to deal with conflict situations, what it sometimes can be is that there's a difference in style between the employee and the manager, or the manager maybe not being quite self-aware of how they are coming across. And we do sometimes do some coaching then with people around how they might reposition themselves so that they can better then connect with the people that they're dealing with. And I've articulated that here by giving you some examples. So there is subtlety here, arguably. Maybe one almost reads like the other, but the whole messaging here is about trying to communicate with people that isn't inciting a sense of conflict, or doesn't leave them feeling isolated or targeted. So will you please is probably going to be better than would you mind. I won't be able to is probably better than I'm not sure if I can, and I've decided not to is better than I don't think I can. So the messaging on the left, the will you please, I won't be able to, I've decided not to, is more direct than maybe slightly more wishy-washy comments there on the right. With this, thinking about the best way to give feedback, again, you want to invite the employee to take ownership for what they're asking for. So do also get the employee to talk to you in this two-way conversation about how they feel that it might be possible to find the way forward. If you can't, then unfortunately we suddenly find ourselves in the more trickier space of having to deal with issues at a more formal level, and you should have policies in place that will determine how. So often that's sunk into the grievance policy, all of which is articulated through the ACAS Code of Conduct and the ACAS practice guides to grievances and disciplinaries at work. This I wanted to put this in because this is, if you like, what determines the framework of how you deal with formal issues. So where issues can't be resolved, employees do have the statutory right then to raise them further into grievances, and unfortunately sometimes where conflict is not dealt with early enough, this is where we find ourselves. So do make sure that you've got your policies in place, so if there is a formal escalation, you are in the best place to deal with it. Just a point to note here, there is a financial bite. So if you get to tribunal and a conflict situation hasn't been fully resolved using the ACAS code, you are potentially looking at a 25% uplift in the employment tribunal award, because it's the ACAS code that the employment tribunal expects to see has been followed. I suppose really just to end, on the reality of it, so many times I think we tell people this, that it's often not really how you, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And people will always remember how they were dealt with, even in the most difficult situations, and how you made them feel. And that will absolutely be a determinant, I find, of what the outcome will be. So, primarily almost back to the point that when you are dealing with these conflicts and very difficult situations, do so compassionately and fairly, to try to arrive at the best outcome. So in summary then, managing conflicts is going to be all about early detection. So look out, as I said, for the early warning signs, if you like, passive aggressive behavior, sarcasm, that is an indication that there's maybe a deeper issue. Have proactive measures. So in your culture, in your performance management culture, for example, have it be the case that people can have space to be open about how they are feeling. Sometimes conflict can bubble if people feel they don't have an out to share how they're feeling. So that's an important part of conflict resolution, is giving people space so they know they can, they can share their concerns and they will be heard. And ultimately, if it can't be resolved, then beyond the early intervention, make sure that you have strategies in place, such as mediation support or the right policies and processes to deal with it. So before I open the floor up, make sure you've got, as I said, the right policies and documentation, and you have the right HR support in place. So that's a whistle stop, if you like, through conflict. As I said, the how-to is designed to give you now, as participants, the space to ask questions or to pick up on points that have been raised, or share thoughts, because as I said at the start, it's a very two-way session, the how-to session. So please take to the chat, do share what you think, do share questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. Please don't leave me hanging, because it's always awkward when nobody asks questions. There must be a delay on my chat, because I haven't heard, nothing's come through as yet. Here we go. Great, Rifat. Thank you. Rifat has a question she's going to pose to us, which is brilliant. Again, just a plug, do share any thoughts that you have on the points that have raised, anything that surprised you or that maybe you do differently. Maybe there's something that works well for you that you could share with the group, because we all have different ways of dealing with these things, I suppose. Just while we wait for Rifat to ask her question, which I'll definitely be coming back to, I just think in the interest of time, just to say that we have a whole range of tools we can help you with. So do contact me if we can help. How do you support staff members to reflect on their actions, strategies? That's a really good question. Thank you. What we often do is we probably invite staff members to do exactly that, to reflect on their behavior. So in a one-to-one, you might want to position the behavior you've observed that needs to be worked on. So I observed yesterday that you didn't complete this task in a way we've talked about. Help me understand why that was. What is it maybe about that you don't understand? How could you do that differently next time? So really inciting ownership by having the employee reflect on their actions would be the simple way to do it. If one of the people is in conflict, is the manager, where or how do you refer this? I mean, what if the manager doesn't even recognize that they are part of the problem? Brilliant question. Yeah, and that can sometimes be the case for sure, Rifat. So thank you for that. Ultimately, we have to recognize that the employee has an onus, has a responsibility to raise the concerns with the manager, and give the manager the opportunity to course correct. But if that happens and is not being responded to, then the next port of call would probably be your HR team, or another manager, for example, that may be able to mediate between the two of you. And ultimately, if none of that works, then employees always have the right to raise a grievance, which is the formal process that has to be complied with. So thank you, Rifat. Good real life question there. Okay, again, do please feel free. I'm conscious that it's a power half hour, so I'm not going to I'm not going to sort of hesitate too much longer. I just wanted to share with you that, as you will be aware, some of you, that as the HR department, we do have a full range of kit of tools to help you. And we do often deal with, unfortunately, conflict situations, some quite straightforward, some very complex. If you find that you are in that space, then do please talk to me, and we can certainly support you through that. But do please make sure you've got the right policies and procedures in place in the first instance. And if you don't, then again, talk to me, because we have a range of tools that can help you. We also have a really super website, and just a quick plug that we are doing other webinars over the course of the next few months, in particular with the upcoming employment rights bill on the horizon. That's where we'll be turning our attention to next as we move towards the end of the year. So do look out for that and many more other free webinars that we are running. And finally, stay connected. So do please, follow us. As you can tell, we love to share. We love talking and helping people. So lots of free stuff. So do please keep following us. And thank you again for joining us today. Thank you, Joe. Good to have you here. And thank you. Yeah. And we'll send the slides and the recording out to you. Unless you've got any other questions, I think we're done. Thank you.